WLBT3 Law Call.
And welcome to WLBT Law Call, everyone. And as we do each week here on the show, we take your legal questions and then answer them live on the air. And tonight our topic is, can my boss do that? And the phone lines are open for you right now. If you have a question, give us a call at 601-965-7551. Again, that number is 601-965-7551. And before we take your questions, we're going to see what's on the docket for the next few weeks here. So just start with August 31st. We will take your calls about traffic accidents. Then September 7th, we'll discuss your home, your property. And then on September 14th, you can ask us anything. One of my favorite topics here. Just toss it on out there. And on the panel with me tonight is attorney Patrick Maloof. Welcome.
Hey, Tamika. Thank you so much.
I'm glad you are here.
It's been like the whole summer and I haven't been here.
I know. We've had some Maloofs in here, though.
Yeah. Mike Maloof.
Mike was here, your cousin. Then I know your other cousin in the Gluckstadt area that has the deli.
Yeah, Eric
and
Maloof.
So, yeah, he's an attorney, and we were laughing about, it's like, is there like a little family clause? You know, you guys play with the law books and you kind of pass it around at family holidays.
In fact, I think Mike Maloof's in a firm called Maloof, and Maloof. So they're great lawyers, and I was so excited that he was here on the show. I think he was on the show with Rocky, wasn't he?
Yes, he did a good job. We enjoyed him.
Yeah.
All right. And so we're going to enjoy you, too. Tell us who's helping you out today.
Well, I'm very pleased to say that tonight we have Mr. Lewis Watson here tonight. And Lewis, I'm going to go on a limb and say, is an expert in the employment law area. And so I'm very glad to have him here because I am not an expert in the employment law area, but we're glad to have Mr. Watson here.
Thank you, Patrick. Good to be here with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we're glad to have you here. So just tell us about your background, how long you've been practicing, where's your office, and
Sure. I grew up here in Jackson, Mississippi. Attended Murrah High School, so I'm a product of Jackson Public Schools. I went to Mississippi State University, thought I wanted to be an engineer, graduated in industrial engineering, and then from there I went to law school at Ole Miss, and that's where I first met Patrick.
That's right. We were actually in class together. He was graduating the year I think I started, so we were in a few classes together.
oh,
So,
and look at that. It's just that divine order. You
And
never
so-
knew that. How
Well-
many years later? What 20-something years later?
Almost 22 years later.
I have to confess, though, I actually call Lewis from time to time when I have an employment question because he's the guy to go to in this area if you have any question about employment law.
And
So,
he has. I remember a few times in my reporting days interviewing you, a few cases that were out there. So, I mean, he has a familiar face, so I'm sure some people probably out there like, I think I've seen him before, but.
Right. Every once
yes.
in a while we have a case that the news media is interested in. And it doesn't happen all the time, and it's not with every one of our cases. Our office handles approximately 50 cases at one time. And so not at all times will those be newsworthy, but sometimes they are. And most of our trials take place here in Jackson in the federal courthouse.
Okay, well, we have someone on the line for you right now. Marie from Pike County is holding. Welcome to Law Call, Marie, and you can ask her question.
Yes, my husband is a supervisor for a company, and sometimes he has to work his days off and over 72 hours a week, and he does not receive any overtime. I was wondering, is that legal?
And thank you for your call. Overtime.
Yes, overtime. That's a very interesting topic. We handle a lot of Fair Labor Standards Act cases. The main issue is going to be whether or not your husband is an exempt employee. If he is an exempt employee, then they can work your husband as many hours a week that they want. However, if your husband's non-exempt, then he has to be paid minimum wage and paid time and a half his regular rate for all hours over 40 in a given work week. So it will depend on the position that your husband has, the responsibilities that he has, as to whether or not he's an exempt employee. And if he's exempt, then he's not entitled to overtime. But if he's not exempt, then he should be paid time and a half his regular rate for those hours. You say he works 72 hours a week. If that's over the normal 40, he's owed 32 hours of overtime at time and a half.
Lewis, I wanted to ask you because talking about exempt employees, is it generally accepted that if someone's a salaried employee versus an hourly employee, that salaried employee would not get the overtime benefits? Is that what defines an exempt employee?
No, it's not, and that is what is sometimes a common misconception, that people that are on salary think that they're exempt by virtue of being on salary, and that's not the case. you have to qualify as an executive, professional, or administrative exception to be an exempt employee. Now, the way somebody's compensated, if it's by a salary, that can be some evidence of the exemption.
All right, I hope that helps you out there. Our next caller is Mary, and Mary's from Kosciuszko. Welcome to Law Call. Mary, you can ask your question now.
The question that I have, good afternoon first. The question that I have is that my husband worked for an employer, and this employer started out real well. He worked there for 13 months. And but about a month or two into the job, he started having his checks to bounce. We would go to cash his check, and they would bounce, and his bank that the employer used, even the bank wouldn't have the money. Okay, then after that, even if he got a check and it bounced something, he didn't get his check on a regular basis. They were to be paid once a week, every Friday, but there was lots of time when he would have to wait a week or two later. So his former that hired him on this job told them, because he wasn't getting paid either, and a lot of the workers there weren't being paid, and they told him to go home. And so my husband applied for unemployment until he could find work. And this man let him draw unemployment for about 4 weeks, and then he said, no more. We can't do that anymore. We can't let you draw. So what my question is there any legal action that can be taken on that behalf of not getting paid, and then after getting paid, fraudulently having the checks to bounce, no money?
Thank you, Mary.
You know, I'd like to respond to the first half
Sure.
of that question about what legal action, if any, you could take against the employer, and then I'd turn it over to Lewis about the unemployment part of that question. The good news is when an employer doesn't pay you, you absolutely have legal action against that employer. In this instance, you have every right, if you're paid by the hour, to go in and bring a claim against that employer for the hours that you worked. However, it sounds like a situation where, you know, it might be futile to bring that claim because obviously this employer either isn't has done something with the money or isn't making enough money to actually pay the employees. And I believe that, you know, unemployment may be the more appropriate route. And Lewis, I'd like you to address, if you could, the unemployment claim there if she has.
Sure. As far as unemployment is concerned, an employer can't simply turn on and turn off unemployment benefits. An individual is going to be entitled to unemployment if they've worked there the requisite time period, as long as they're not guilty of misconduct and as long as they didn't voluntarily quit their job. So as long as they're eligible, they should receive unemployment benefits, and an employer simply can't turn it off. What I suspect happened is the employer may have appealed the initial determination that the employee was eligible for unemployment benefits. And so it's very important that you pay attention to the time deadlines, because you have a very short timeline to appeal, 14 days. And so you need to make sure if you're challenging the unemployment decision that you meet those appeal deadlines.
Okay, I hope that helps you out there. Our next caller is Cassandra, and Cassandra's from Jackson. Welcome to Law Call. What's your question? Cassandra,
Yes, ma'am.
you can ask your question now.
Okay. I asked my vice president, could I have a meeting with him and my supervisor because of a coworker. We clashed some kind of way during the couple of years that we've been working together. And he would always throw me off to asking my supervisor. So my supervisor went, well, we had an altercation in my supervisor's office, and nothing was done about it. Neither her or I, I thought everything was good. But last week, we had another altercation with the vice president and the president, and I was just like wanting to know, what can I do to make things right, because I really don't want to press the issue or because I need my job.
I understand.
I understand that, and you do help her out with that. What your advice there?
Yes, my advice in a situation like that is to document it, to make careful notes about what happens and when it happens, because if you should lose your job in the future, you want to be sure that you're protecting any type of cause of action that you might have. So I would keep detailed notes. I would not try to do anything controversial. I would try to keep myself, do my job, and do what I'm supposed to do, and try to keep personalities out of the workplace.
That's always tough. That's
right.
always tough.
That's
Just
right.
pray. All right.
That's right.
And it is time for us to take a quick break. Whether you are an employee or a boss, if you have a question about an on-the-job issue, give us a call. We'll be right back after this break.
Law Call with award-winning broadcaster Tamika Smith and personal injury attorneys Tim Porter of the Jackson Law Firm of Porter Maloof, called one of the winningest firms in the United States. And Jackson attorney Rocky Wilkins with more than $70 million in settlements and verdicts. Plus guest attorneys from across Mississippi. Your rights, your calls, live. Law Call.
Sometimes people think that if they are hurt in a collision, their only recourse is to take it up with the insurance company. In tonight's legal brief, personal injury attorney Rocky Wilkins explains how to know when it's time to call a lawyer instead.
A lawyer can go over your particular case and determine what it may be worth. Sometimes it is as simple as dealing directly with an insurance company, and a personal injury lawyer will tell you if you can handle it on your own. When you have been injured in a collision, you may not realize how badly you are injured at first. Some injuries are obvious. Others may not show up until days or weeks later. Also, there are times when you may be injured due to the exposure of dangerous chemicals, and it can happen over a long period of time without you ever realizing it. Insurance companies have experienced adjusters who negotiate claims every day. Of course, they want to pay as little as possible on your claim. Sometimes the amount isn't enough to cover your medical bills or compensate you for your injuries. A lawyer can help you navigate the process and deal with the insurance adjuster so you can concentrate on getting better. That's your legal brief for tonight. I'm personal injury attorney Rocky Wilkins. Back to you.
Thank you, Rocky, or AKA Houston's dad.
That's right, Houston's dad.
He's such a cutie. He is such a cutie. I'm talking about Houston, the baby.
Right.
Yeah.
Rocky's child.
All right, and we're taking your questions this evening. If you have a question, actually we're answering the question, can my boss do that? So if you have a question about on-the-job discrimination or just issues on the job, give us a call, and the number there is on your screen. On the line holding is Reno from Jackson. Welcome to Law Call, Reno. And what's your question this evening?
Yes, I have a question. Say you've been on the job and you got hurt on your job, and for 3 months you've been on restrictions. And one day the boss come and ask you to do something that you felt like was against your restriction, and you refused. So by you refusing, the boss tell you that you're going to do it anyway. So you refuse again, then by you refusing, she asks you to come into the office and do a write-up. You refuse that too. All that, you get terminated for disobeying your boss. Are they allowed to do that?
Thank you for your call.
Well,
Louis?
Patrick, unfortunately, as we were discussing earlier, Mississippi is an employment at will state. So unless you fit within one of those two small public policy exceptions, an employee can be fired for a good reason, bad reason, no reason at all. And here in this situation, it's tied to a workers' compensation claim. And Mississippi is one of the few states that does not have a law on the books that makes it illegal to retaliate against an employee who files a workers' comp claim. And so we don't have a statute on the books. There have been multiple lawsuits to try to bring that cause of action, and the courts have repeatedly held that that's a legislative function. And because we have workers' comp statutes, if the legislature had wanted an anti-retaliation provision in the statutes, it should have put one in there. So unfortunately, people that are in this exact same position do not have any recourse in Mississippi.
So what's the downside of that for at least the employer? Because you do see situations like this, and I guess I'm just wondering if I was the boss, I mean, would I be concerned about just stuff like that though? I mean, or just kind of live into that employee at will? I mean, I guess I would be more concerned about reputation damage. Do you see that sometime? Because that's where the social media part come in. There's been recent cases about people making comments, and I would think that's the downside for an employee in a situation like what's just been explained.
Well, that's a very good point, and I think an employer should be concerned about their reputation and should be concerned if they want to attract good, hardworking people to work for them. They cannot treat people the way that this gentleman was just treated. And I think 10 years ago, it was a lot easier for an employer to get away with that type of behavior. But in today's society, with social media, everybody's in communication. So I think it's going to be a lot harder for that employer to be able to hire good employees.
That's exactly right. And what we see today with social media is when people make complaints, they do have the ability to reach so many other people, even other employees that may be with that same facility. I would just caution against, make sure that everything that you ever put on social media is absolutely accurate, because then you get into defamation laws. And so with social media today, with the way the laws are in the state of Mississippi, make sure whatever you put on your social media page or however you put it out there, that it's absolutely accurate, so you don't bump into some type of defamation claim back against you if you put something on there that's not correct. So.
Okay.
Well, I can add to that. We see in discovery all the time in our cases that we bring on behalf of individuals, the company, the first thing they go for or want is that social media account, and they want to take that Facebook page to see what's been posted. So you're absolutely right. You need to be careful what you post.
Yeah.
All right, so just don't live into that employee at will so much.
Right.
All right, okay. On the line holding is Jane, and Jane's from Jackson. Welcome to Law Call, Jane, and what's your question this evening?
My question is, can a school district hold your license hostage if you have provided proper notice to them that you will not be returning the following school year and that they have a replacement in your place for that particular position, and that caused a delay in me getting another job in another county, especially when I told them that my husband was transferring?
That sounds like one of what my old law professor used to say. That's a good exam question, because that's an excellent question, and you're involved in several things there. The school district, for one, which is presumably a governmental entity. Lewis, I'm going to throw this one at you. It sounds like a good question, but what do you know about if there's a license at a school district and she's trying to get a job somewhere else?
They should not be able to hold it hostage. The problem is, how do you go about getting them to release it? Mm-hmm. And the only way that I know about going about to do that is to file a lawsuit. So you would have to file a lawsuit in state court or perhaps in chancery court, court of equity, and ask for some type of injunctive relief. Mm-hmm. But of course, that's an expensive procedure.
Yeah.
And speaking of expensive, how expensive is that, or the cost to go against your employer filing?
Well, it depends on whether the claim is in state court or federal court. In state court, the filing fee was just raised from $120 to $160. That was so that we could give our judges raises. So here, the filing fee in Hinds County raised from $120 to $160. If you have a federal claim and you want to file your lawsuit in federal court, that filing fee just increased from $350 to $400 to file a lawsuit.
Okay. All right, it's time for us to toss the break. We'll be right back to take more of your questions about on-the-job issues. If you have additional questions for our guest, Lewis Watson Jr. can be contacted at the Watson and Norris Law Firm in Jackson, and that number is 601-968-0000. Easy. And Rocky Wilkins can be contacted at the Rocky Wilkins Law Firm in Jackson, and this number is 601-948-6888. And Patrick Maloof and Tim Porter can be reached at the Porter Maloof Law Firm in Jackson, and their number is 601-957-1173. All right, we're going to continue on taking your calls this evening about the question, can my boss do that? And we've been having a good time here talking with Lewis, and you've been helping out well too.
I've been listening. I've been learning.
Actually, you've
I've
been
learning.
on it. You said at the beginning of the show that you were just going to toss stuff. He's all in the mix here, huh?
He is.
He's all in the mix.
We'll
all
see
right.
on the next question.
All right. Our next caller is Ann, and Ann's from Yazoo City. Welcome to Law Call, Ann, and what's your question this evening?
Yes, ma'am. My question is, I've been with my current employer for 6 years. I am an outside sales. I have a signed commission agreement of what I'm to get paid. This has probably been my best year of sales with this company, and they have now wanted to renegotiate my commission to lessen it, and I just wondered, was that legal?
Okay, you got about 30 seconds to help her.
Sure. If you have a contract right now, it should have some type of expiration date. The company is free to negotiate as well as you. And so if you're not in an agreement that your commission should be reduced, then you ought to challenge them on it. But as an outside salesperson, you should be exempt under the Fair Labor Standards Act.
All right, I hope that helped you out there, and you've done a good. You guys are just awesome.
Oh, well, thank you.
Did a really good
I want to
job.
thank Lewis for being here because he's very knowledgeable about
He is.
employment laws we've all seen tonight. And so if you have any questions about employment law, please call Mr. Watson at his law office.
Too bad I didn't get my questions in. We'll talk after the show.
Okay.
And we'll
After
see
the
you all
show.
right back here next Saturday at 6:30. We'll be taking your questions about traffic accidents and highway safety on a busy Labor Day weekend. Good night, everyone.
Good
and be
night.
safe.